What are the elements of horror? Is it a man in a monster suit? Is it an animatronic puppet?
Raising the head.
Is it the bone-chilling sound of an alien monster feeding on rotting flesh? For the masters of Monsters and Mayhem, a great horror film comprises all of these elements and much more.
Roar again.
Coming up, we'll explore the fantastic movie magic of cinematic horror, from the nightmarish vampires of the silent era to the bloodthirsty creatures in From Dusk Till Dawn. We'll see how classic tales of terror are constantly updated to deliver bigger and bloodier thrills.
Ah, look arm, green blood.
We'll meet the man who was the creature from the Black Lagoon and hear what it was like to be carried away by this demon of the deep.
I guess that was one of the things I always could do well. I would just take a deep breath and scream.
We'll salute the horror masters of Hammer Films, who presented our favorite monsters in living color. And today's visual effects artists will show how they use special props, realistic makeups, and plenty of fake blood to bring us unforgettable scenes of monsters and mayhem. Movie Magic presents Monsters and Mayhem. At a south-of-the-border strip bar, some unlucky travelers are battling to stay alive through the night. This is the vampire free-for-all From Dusk Till Dawn. It was written by Oscar winner Quentin Tarantino, who also performs a memorable death scene. The cast of creatures includes some of the most amazing bloodsuckers ever created. To produce the dozens of vampires in the film, director Robert Rodriguez relies on K&B Effects Group. The Los Angeles company has made creatures and character makeups for such films as In the Mouth of Madness, Vampire in Brooklyn, and Army of Darkness. As with each new project, the artists at K&B started with imaginative conceptual drawings.
Each vampire in From Dusk Till Dawn looks completely different. So right when you think you've seen it, then boom, another one pops up. So the audience goes, wow, it's like there's so much stuff. Every character and every creature looks completely different. And that really shows the scope of the amount of work that we had to do on that film, was creating different looks for each character.
These vampire characters were created through a combination of puppets, actors in suits, and special makeups. For a scene where a rodent vampire attacks George Clooney, a cable-controlled puppet is built and tested in K&B's shop.
Lift that, we need the head lifted up. There you go.
Then it's taken to the set and positioned for the film camera.
Raise them up, guys.
In the actual scene, the metal and rubber creature gives an explosive performance.
People are attracted to vampires for a lot of reasons. I think there's a major sexuality about it. I mean, it's very intimate. It's a seduction. I think people are also very intrigued with vampires simply because of the fact that it conveys immortal life. You know, Dracula is based on a real person that did exist.
Vampires first appeared on screen in the 1922 German silent film Nosferatu. As the story unfolds, actor Max Schreck's makeup goes through progressive changes so that he appears ever more terrifying. In 1931, a low-budget movie introduced audiences to the king of vampires.
I am Dracula.
Dracula made a legend of a little-known 50-year-old Hungarian stage actor named Bela Lugosi.
Mr. Lugosi, what was your first mystery play?
It was Dracula.
Or did the role depress you?
Very much. It haunted me. I often dreamed of the dead. In the morning when I woke up, I was tired and depressed.
We will not stop until we have discovered the vampires who seek the life of this beautiful girl.
While Lugosi's performance remains the classic, modern interpretations have breathed new life into vampires. In Hollywood, vampires come in all shapes and sizes. Today's filmmakers are carrying on a tradition that's 3/4 of a century old.
I think people really like horror films because it is a form of escape. You can forget your troubles, your worries, and go and sit for an hour and a half and be scared. It's a whole different world. The greatest compliment we could get from the audience about this movie is that this movie overall is really super entertaining. And the monsters are really neat too. And that means that we've succeeded. We've created an entire film that works on all levels.
In 1954, movie audiences were alerted to a new cinematic presence, a deadly creature whose popularity would soon rival that of Dracula and the Frankenstein creature.
What was it? Science didn't know?
No!
The most unique aspect of the picture for me was relating to the creature, to really putting one's imagination to the point that these incredible events were happening, that they were really happening.
Julie Adams would gain eternal fame as the love interest of this prehistoric jungle beast. But before the cameras rolled, the creature from the Black Lagoon went through several revisions in the Universal Studios makeup department. The final Gillman look was developed by department head Bud Westmore and veteran makeup artist Jack Keevan. But dozens of talented individuals worked on the costume that would be worn by a 25-year-old actor named Ben Chapman.
I watched him literally being put together. And you know, when you're watching sections and pieces being put together, in your heart you wonder, what am I going to look like when I put on? So the first time I put on a suit, it was like slipping into the skin or body of this Gillman. So I, through almost a metamorphosis, became the Gillman.
I think Ben had a very good sense of menace. One of the things that Ben did so well was the kind of slow and deliberate steps so that the creature on land never seemed to just move swiftly, and it built the suspense.
Achieving that performance wasn't easy. The creature costume was actually a one-piece body stocking over which thick foam rubber body parts were glued.
I would report into makeup, and we would start. They would have to pull it up to where it would fit every crease exactly. It took 2 hours, 2 to 3 people helping me into that thing.
And then you would put your imagination to work, and it was not Ben Chapman in his suit anymore. This was an incredible monster from the deep.
No, don't shoot! Don't shoot! Puppy, you might hit Kay!
The creature from the Black Lagoon went on to become the most enduring movie monster of the 1950s. Today, its continued popularity surprises the film's stars.
I never thought this film would that we would still be talking about it all these years later. Never in a million years.
You will see the most amazing sights the screen has ever known in this strangest of all science fiction adventures.
In the 1950s, actors in monster suits terrorized movie audiences on a daily basis. Alligator people, mole people, reptile women, monsters from outer space, hideous sun demons, all prowled the silver screen to strike terror into the hearts of innocent sex kittens. One Hollywood filmmaker who has carried on the tradition of creating classic screen creatures is Stan Winston. Winston helped bring such terrifying characters as the Alien Queen and the Terminator to the big screen. In 1989, Stan Winston directed a backwoods horror tale that introduced a new cinematic fiend, Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead was a point of departure for me. Until that time, I was very, very closely involved in the design process of every creature that came out of Stan Winston's studio. I was now directing the film. I was not going to design Pumpkinhead.
Instead, a team of artists at Stan Winston's studio worked to design a stalking demon unlike anything seen in motion pictures. One of the team, Tom Woodruff Jr., would also perform the role of Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead's a demon that's conjured up for purposes of revenge and vengeance, and as such, he's not so much a monster as just a dark, evil force.
Reach towards me.
The creation process lasted several weeks, as artistic vision was tempered with the physical possibilities of the performance.
One of our goals in Pumpkinhead was to keep the creature looking very lean and skeletal. We didn't have a lot of room for support, so we simply had some stilts that would give me the proper height. So with Pumpkinhead, the trick was having me be able to walk on stilts and have some kind of control and some kind of balance so that I was able to take direction from Stan when I was in the suit.
And the direction that I would give is that Pumpkinhead is not a monster. Pumpkinhead is not some ghoul. Pumpkinhead is our worst nightmare. I dug down very deep to think the darkest images that I could come up with to create this evil character and put it on screen. He is the worst side of all of us and is that side that you never want to let out.
As long as inhuman beings roam our bleakest nightmares, Hollywood filmmakers will suit up to deliver evil incarnate in striking new forms. An ancient moon is hurtling toward Earth, and a team of interplanetary adventurers has been called upon to alter its deadly course.
Fire in the hole!
Tunneling through the moon's rocky surface, the team inadvertently reanimates a grotesque fossil with a million-year-old appetite for flesh.
Holy Christ.
In this pivotal scene from Within the Rock, the first indication of horror is the sound of the beast awakening.
I think sound is probably the secret weapon of the horror filmmaker. I don't think an image can inspire fear unless it's got the right kind of sound to accompany it.
For Gary Tunnicliffe, the creation of fear has been a lifelong obsession.
I've always loved horror films from when I was really, really young until now. And I'd see the Frankenstein characters or the Monster Maker characters, and I think, wow, I'd love to do that, to be in a basement somewhere, building creatures and building monsters.
As a monster maker, Gary has worked on such legendary hellraisers as Pinhead. The film's producers believe that Tunnicliffe brings essential skills to Within the Rock.
Years of experience in the creature business, obviously, and years of effects work. And he's bringing all that expertise, the pulling off of the movie magic as far as making a creature, in this case, real. This creature is huge. He's got a ectoskeleton, sort of bony composition. It's a very scary thing to look at. A lot of sharp teeth. We're very happy with it.
And cut.
I think designing and building a creature is probably only one of the first steps. Only when an audience can hear it as well as see it can they be really scared of it.
The reanimation scene begins with visuals only. Several close-up shots of pulsing, oozing, bony, plate-covered flesh. It's the job of Doug Reed to breathe life into these silent images. As a Foley artist, Doug covers every sound of movement that each character makes in a film. With a handful of groceries and some beat-up props, Doug is about to conjure up the sound of an alien creature being reborn.
We're just trying to achieve a reptilian, human-sized creature who's very evil, and he's dry and brittle, and he's got a leathery skin. I use the cabbage for the movement of skin. The rubber chicken has a more of a movement and space to it. And the hair gel, or goo as we fondly refer to it, we use that for, well, goo.
The dripping part is good. It's the like slurps and that aren't working. Just do like sticky, drippy, gooey. Okay, ready?
All right, thanks, man.
After creating several layers or audio tracks of individual sounds, Doug listens to the overall combination of sounds. Once it comes alive, the creature from within the rock begins hunting for food. To create the vocalizations of the creature, the filmmakers turned to sound designer Elmo Weber.
Sound design is the creation of a new sound that doesn't really exist in the universe. And you can do that by combining sounds that do exist or creating them with synthesizers or various processing devices. And making something believable, make it seem like, if it's a monster you're creating, make it seem like it's a living creature.
For the creature's roar, Elmo uses a combination of animal sounds.
Here is a poodle, a toy poodle, the original pitch. Okay. All right, now if I take it down an octave, sounds like that, and then even further. Now we're more like a monster. Okay, this is a Rottweiler. I used a lot of him. There's his original self, and then more of his monster self.
Elmo adds a squealing pig. And some breathing sounds that he created using this apparatus he made out of plastic plumbing pipes. By assigning these sounds to different keys on his synthesizer, Elmo is able to compose the creature's roar to the picture on the screen. The result is an otherworldly scream that helps breathe life into a terrifying vision.
Set the C4. Set detonator.
The actors must also participate in the post-production audio process. Carolyn Barkley, who plays the part of Dr. Dana Shaw, is redoing lines that could not be recorded clearly on the noisy film set. This process is called ADR, Automated Dialogue Replacement.
How long you got?
Even Carolyn's breathing is re-recorded, using a plastic jug to replicate the sound inside her space helmet.
Let me see how you're holding it. No, it can't be in front of your
Well, it was like that, yeah. Is that
This-
you want inside? Okay.
That sounds pretty good.
Okay.
In the grand tradition of Hollywood horror, the most fearful noise is saved for the big climax.
That was great. I didn't think you were going to go that far.
It always amazes me, watching any film, to see something that you created out of clay and foam and latex, suddenly to be breathing and making these noises, and I think they did a great job, because rather than going over the top, they made it believable.
One of the scariest characters in motion pictures is also the oldest. In 1910, Thomas Edison's film company released the first screen version of Frankenstein. The creation of the creature was achieved by reversing a shot of a melting wax mannequin. Frankenstein has been called the most brilliant novel ever written by a teenager. Mary Shelley was only 18 when she conceived her story of a pathetic creature adrift in a heartless world.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
When Hollywood got its hands on Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's morality tale was transformed into one of the earliest blockbuster horror films.
When this dead hand moves, the monster created by a man they called Mad is turned loose to strike terror into the hearts of men, to shock women into uncontrolled hysteria. This is the blood-chilling story that stuns your emotions.
Boris Karloff's 1931 performance was so remarkable that he became Frankenstein's monster for generations of moviegoers. Jack Pierce, Karloff's makeup artist, once said, "I discovered there are 6 ways a surgeon can cut the skull, and I figured Dr. Frankenstein, who was not a practicing surgeon, would take the easiest. That is, he would cut the top of the skull straight across like a pot lid. That's the reason I decided to make the monster's head square and flat like a box." Pierce's concept of Mary Shelley's creature remained unchallenged until 1957, when a monstrosity of shreds and patches crawled from a laboratory vat to terrorize Dr. Frankenstein, played by award-winning British actor Peter Cushing.
It wasn't his intention to make a monster that went raving mad, but you see, it made an awfully good story. Because if he had made just someone who was rather charming, became Prime Minister, well, it'd be all right, but not quite so interesting as, you know, someone rushing around the countryside looking rather ugly.
Filmed in brilliant blood-red color, The Curse of Frankenstein was the first horror role for a struggling British actor named Christopher Lee.
So we had to think up a makeup of our own. And we went through various tests in which I became more and more unearthly in appearance. But if you are literally creating life, you're putting somebody together from bits and pieces of other people's bodies, including a brain, which has gone wrong, it's rather like a patchwork. One of the critics said I looked like a road accident.
The Curse of Frankenstein broke all box office records when it opened in London. Hammer Films, the British company that produced it, would soon become the most influential and profitable fright factory in the world.
No door could ever bar his way. He is back from the dead.
Count Dracula is alive.
I loved the Hammer films when I grew up. They made it a little sexier, a little bloodier, a little more erotic, and a lot more gothic in terms of its design and architecture and stuff like that. And the actors were all classically trained. I mean, there was something about them that was incredibly compelling.
Hammer Films followed their initial success by remaking and revitalizing another horror classic.
You must help me. You must. You're my only hope. You must.
I'll help you.
My first thoughts about portraying Dracula were actually very simple ones. I read the book and I decided, right, he's heroic, he's romantic, he's erotic, and he has immense intellectual and physical power. But above all, stillness. Don't do anything unless it really means something. And when I did do something, it was explosive.
For Christopher Lee, the universal appeal of Count Dracula is clear.
Power. Physical and mental power. Most men. And don't women dream about a character who is utterly irresistible? But above all, we get into the question of immortality, because the character of the vampire is undead. He cannot die. He has to live. Can only live in one way, and that's on blood.
Dracula, the bedeviled master of all that is evil.
Many of Hammer's 9 Dracula films were shot at Bray Studios, their small production facility outside London. In these rare home movies of 1965, makeup artist Roy Ashton outfits Christopher Lee with special hand-painted contact lenses designed to give a wild, bloodshot appearance.
Of course, I couldn't see very well. So if I had to swoop down the stairs at vast speed and literally assault some unsuspecting victim, I very often missed them. It was very uncomfortable, but enormously effective, of course.
For this scene in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, a frozen moat is created with a plaster surface covered in a salt solution to simulate ice. Director Terence Fisher calls action, and the climactic fight begins. Notoriously low budget, Hammer films often required stars to perform their own stunts. Here, Christopher Lee takes a plunge into a vat of cold water as the ice breaks. The Gothic horror created by Hammer Films was hugely successful with audiences, but film critics such as Nina Hibbins of the Daily Worker were extremely hostile.
From the moment that Dracula appears, eyes bloodshot, fangs dripping with blood, until his final disintegration into a crumbling, putrescent pile of human dust, this film disgusts the mind and repels the senses.
Despite the reviews, Hammer Films have influenced an entire generation of horror filmmakers. Christopher Lee went on to appear in 7 vampire movies and to play a leading role in Hammer's success.
Walk with the undead in their quest for human blood.
Today, these scenes of violence seem less shocking than they must have appeared to audiences of the late 1950s and early 60s. But to any fan of big screen chills, the legacy of Hammer horror continues to resonate through time, as Count Dracula eternally roams the earth in search of his next unsuspecting victim. At a film location north of Los Angeles, a team of special effects artists is involved in a unique task, bringing an insatiably hungry underground beast to life.
That's too stretched forward, Tom.
Tom, show him an up position.
Yeah. That's great, right there.
The film is Tremors 2: Aftershocks. It's the sequel to the 1990 thriller about a group of isolated misfits